Hello everyone, and welcome to the lecture on vector operations. Let's go ahead and jump to RStudio and learn how to work with vectors in some basic operations. Okay, so here we are at RStudio, and what we're going to do is just perform some basic arithmetic with vectors and do some other operations just to show you how they work within R. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by creating two vectors. The first one's just going to be a numeric vector, 1, 2, 3, so use the combine function, that's C. I'm going to go ahead and name it v1, and then I will assign v2. We'll just go ahead and say this one's 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I have my two vectors. Let's just go ahead and go over some basic arithmetic. So for basic arithmetic, what you'll be doing is an element by element operation. And so what that means, if I were to say something like v1 plus v2, it's going to perform that operation element by element. So you can see here that 6 is 5 plus 1, 8 is 6 plus 2, and 10 is 3 plus 7. And it's going to be the same for subtraction. So I could say something like v1 minus v2. Notice I just get all negative 4s. I could do, again, just v2 minus v1, all positive 4s. I can also multiply vectors element by element basis. So v1 times v2, that will be 5 times 1, 6 times 2, etc. You can also do subtraction, which I showed earlier, as well as division. So I could do v1 divided by v2, and that's going to perform element by element division. Now let's move on to learn about some useful built-in functions in R that we can use along with vectors. So as we've seen before, with functions, you basically have the name of your function, some parentheses, and then you have some input. So let's say you wanted to sum up all the elements in a numeric vector. You can use the built-in sum function. So that will be sum, and then you can just pass in your vector. In this case we have v1, and it will return the sum for you. And if you wanted to, you could actually assign that output to some sort of variable. So we could make a variable called, let's say, sum of vec, and assign that as sum v1, whoops, enter. And now if we call sum of vec, we get that 6. So that's a useful built-in function, and now we're just going to show you a couple more useful built-in functions for vector operations. So we've learned about sum, that's a common function. You can also do things like check the mean of a vector, whoops, v1, that'll return the mean. You can also do things like standard deviation. You can find the maximum element in a vector, as well as the minimum element in a vector. And you can do that all as built-in operations. And the last one I want to show you quickly is taking the product of all the elements in a vector, which is PROD, which just returns all the product of all the elements in the vector. So 1 times 2 times 3, we could show it for v2 as well, 2, 10. So that's 5 times 6 times 7. All right, so that's definitely not all the functions that are available that are built into R. It's just some that you're going to be using over and over again. Don't worry too much about memorizing them now. They'll come up often throughout the course. If you want a reference for all the functions that are available, you can go to the link cran.r-project.org/doc/contrib/short-refcard.pdf. This link is also available to you in the notes for this lecture, or you can just Google search for R reference card, and this link should be in one of the top results. Again, you can look up any sort of R built-in functions reference, and there's tons of cheat sheets online, which are just nice reference cards for all the built-in functions. As we go throughout the course, we'll be using the most common ones over and over again, so you probably won't have to reference them too often. Okay, thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.